Welcome to Blending NFTs and DeFi. You get 3 out of 5 of us. I'm Jordan Lyall. I started a company called NFTs, NFTs.com, Nifty''S. We're building NFTs at scale with big brands and partnerships and artists. We just 2 days ago, we announced the new Matrix avatar project. We're doing 100,000 PFPs and really excited about that. Maybe we can get into it. My background is in DeFi. Was at Consensus for a few years. Prior to that, I sold a startup to JibJab, so I've been doing fun digital media plus blockchain, now fun digital media on the blockchain. Welcome. I guess I'm moderating, which just means I talk first. I'm going to kick it over to Ben.
Hey guys, you guys can hear me, yeah? Ben Lakoff. Yeah, we're doing like a co-keynote today. It's going to be a bit of a conversation. At one point, we'll actually open up for questions as well. My background also is finance. I have my CFA, but then have been doing crypto stuff for a number of years. One of the co-founders and business lead of Charged Particles. So we got a shout out a couple talks ago. You take an NFT and you can put things inside of it. So part of this theme of NFTs being a lot more than art, we've been thinking about for a while. So excited to be here.
Okay, Bradley Reese. I'm the CCO of a company called Checkout.com. We are definitely TradFi, but bravely making our way into the exciting world of Web3. Our core services are basically to help people accept money over the world, although increasingly that's becoming how they accept value. So while we work with the likes of the Netflixes, Facebooks, Revoluts, Wisers, we now increasingly start supporting the exchange industries. So many of the largest exchanges, Coinbase, Crypto.com, Binance, are using us for fiat on-off. Really trying to make, to be honest, Web3 a little bit more palatable for a lot of Web2 users who would find a browser plugin a little bit terrifying to start off, and helping to ultimately grow the adoption of this space. Increasingly, that means NFTs too, so we sit behind a lot of the NFT platforms and keep a very close eye on how these can be represented and used, and obviously future applications around more than just art as well.
So if you're here, it means you know a little bit, at least, about what an NFT is. But I'd like to ask you guys, kind of how do you define NFTs as it relates to DeFi? Does it all fit inside this bubble or this circle of Web3? How do you kind of draw the line there?
Sure, and I'll take this first one, then I'll take the next question so you don't have to moderate the whole thing. Yeah, so I just popped in, and there's been a few talks before this, but I think a number of these have fallen into this category of NFTs. It's not just JPEGs, which a lot of people believe, but that there's this move towards the financialization of NFTs, that an NFT can be a structured product, it can be a bond, it can be all of these more complicated financial instruments. So I think, backing up, an NFT is a non-fungible token. It's a token that's not fungible, so it's a unique token. So all of these different use cases, it's this giant, we have a semantics issue because non-fungible token is just like a crazy word for it, because it's in-game items, it's metaverse assets, it's all of these financial products, it's tickets, it's all of these unique tokens. So this will be a key theme of what's happening within the NFT world right now, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of define exactly what they are. I guess it probably makes sense in my mind to actually break them out, because NFT is a very kind of catch-all 3 words, but prescribing value to a file, which effectively is the core for a digital NFT, makes a lot of sense. A lot of the artists in this room, I mean, it's great that you guys can now connect more with your audience and you can monetize in exciting ways, but obviously NFTs could also relate to so many other things: bill of lading for ships, fair trade coffee, supply chains. I mean, there's lots of ways that technology can be used in the real world to also improve, maybe not a paradigm shift, but take us definitely a step forward. This is obviously about lending as well, like how do you actually collateralize and how should you be able to take loans against that? Obviously that's a broad topic. The last 4 or 5 panels, it's been interesting to hear, even when the 3 lawyers were up here, trying to define exactly what the status is really hard these days. Are they securities, are they not? And I think that the answer is yes and no, depending on actually how they operate. So I think that's one of the things which will need definition, that if we look at digital artwork, the obvious comparison is going to be a physical piece of artwork that, of course, can be held as collateral. But then if you're looking at, again, more TradFi sector, but companies like Masterworks, when you fractionalize that artwork, it becomes a security. So things like this are definitely issues that need to be addressed, but I actually think that we could probably look at the kind of Web 2 traditional world for some of the guidance here, because there are definitely mirrors of what we're seeing in terms of how we can classify things in the traditional world and how we can classify things in Web 3 as well.
Yeah, and I think also just it's important to note that all of these things are kind of in their own little silos, like within crypto, and there's going to be a continual converging of all of these things. So right now, maybe it's hot that like DeFi and NFTs are blurring, but also DeFi and NFTs and DAOs and social tokens, all of these things will continue to meld together in unique ways and spit out like, this is the joy of this like composable nature of all of these things. You can put them together and kind of create something else and put new things together there and create something else. And that's where this whole space is going, which is really awesome.
Yeah, in a sense, you could say NFTs are DeFi, depending on your definition. I like to throw that out there just to kind of get people to think, because a couple years ago, when the term DeFi was originated, DeFi meant lending. A couple years prior to that, we had the tools to build DEXs. We built decentralized exchange for ERC20 tokens, and that's what DeFi was. And then lending protocols were built, and you can deposit ETH as collateral and earn or receive DAI token, for example. That was DeFi. And then when yield farming became a thing, that was DeFi. So it's continuing to snowball. And NFTs, in my opinion, are just new tools or new building blocks, to your point, new Lego bricks that product builders and developers and entrepreneurs can build in this space. I didn't mention it in my intro, but I just happened to share a public tweet last year, mid-August of 2020, and it turned into a project called the Meme Project, Don't Buy Meme. And it was just an accident, and it created this, started with the meme, and then a community was formed. Dozens and dozens of us were in here saying, hey, what do we do? Let's create a token. And then some anonymous guy created a token. We airdropped it to the community. We're going to be the Doge for DeFi, and we said, and then we decided, well, we should probably build something. If we're on DeFi, we should actually build one of these building blocks. So we built one of the first platforms that really met at the crossroads of DeFi and NFTs. Don't Buy Meme. It allows you to deposit the meme token, gives it utility, and then you're earning points which can be redeemed for NFTs. And this was really kind of, I wouldn't say we're responsible for this NFT wave, but if you look at the volume chart and you ignore something called Top Shot, there's clear trajectory. But especially in the DeFi space, I think it was a project that really started to show what's possible when you blend DeFi and NFTs. And now we see things like charged particles and some of these other platforms and protocols that kind of take it a step further. It's really exciting to see what can be built using all these tools, and it's continuing. Composable is the word that you used. They're continuing to build off of each other, and it's really exciting for the community.
I will throw out there that our Twitter handle is DeFi NFT, and we had that in February 2020. So, so I'll take the next question, I guess. Like back a little bit more about DeFi. All of us have played around in that space a lot, and maybe perhaps for the people that are less familiar, I had a call with some more traditional finance friends, and I was baffled at the kindergarten level experience of what DeFi was. So I'm curious, when you guys are approaching people that you want to get, kick them down the rabbit hole, kicking and screaming, where do you point them within the DeFi world to kind of let them know what's happening and what's possible out there?
As we're talking about kindergarten level, I'll go first on this one, but it's funny because there's a lot of people who come, and Web3 is actually, and this whole, again, defining Web3 in a sentence, I love asking that question. I get very different answers depending on what project normally people are working on, and they're all right. I mean, it's not really something maybe you should define as a sentence, it's more of like a zeitgeist. So when you're trying to unravel for someone who's not Web3 native or familiar, it's kind of like a puzzle, find the corner pieces, and DeFi is one of them, but stablecoins are another, and NFTs are another. Ultimately, It's how these interact, but you need to kind of start with those and understand what each one of them are. I would actually point them towards stablecoins first and foremost. I think that's really easy, and you understand what the improvement is over traditional financial networks in being able to send something peer-to-peer with just a single network and no financial oversight or regulatory oversight. Technically very elegant. Unfortunately, that also raises problems potentially around KYC, AML, counterterrorism funding. I mean, also things that are, there for a reason in this world. So in terms of like where I would send them, I'd probably send them back 2 steps before I'd send them straight into DeFi. But understanding DeFi, I mean, everyone here probably gets it at its core. I mean, it's all about liquidity, really, is what it comes down to. And that's why NFTs have such an important role to play, is that someone who bought a few Bored Apes, and they may love that, the tribalism of it, and I say that in a positive way, a lot of it is about community. They don't want to let these go, but it also represents 90% of their growth worth. So being able to allow them to take loans or stake them to gain liquidity. I'd love to actually get your thoughts on derivatives and synthetics and where that's going to play in, because I can see that being a really useful tool in this regard as well. But I mean, that's probably the next step I'll take them on, is just imagine it's providing liquidity in the same way that you would stake any sort of physical asset in the real world with a financial institution, except this is an open protocol and it's a liquidity pool that you're pulling into, which is not governed by any one entity. But I will ask that question then. So knowing a little bit about what charged particles do, when you think about how someone with NFTs, and probably people in this room, there's probably a few NFT millionaires on the front row, I'm sure, but how would you advise them how would you advise them to actually be able to leverage those assets most effectively, potentially using things like derivatives?
Yeah, so I mean, I think all of these things that are happening in DeFi, even decentralized derivatives, are still, I would say, at like a nascent stage. But the fact that you can do this in a censorship-resistant, permissionless manner in DeFi already, even with the high gas costs, is truly incredible. So we haven't quite seen that much, and the NFT space moves at blitzkrieg speed. So there's probably like 3 of them that popped up this week that I don't know about, but at scale with a lot of users for like synthetic exposure or derivative exposure to these NFTs. But I think like with DeFi, it just, or even backing up in the traditional world, like a home equity line of credit for you Americans, like using your house as collateral, taking out a loan, that was called a second mortgage for the longest time, and nobody used it because it sounds icky. Like, who wants to take out a second mortgage on their home? So when it was rebranded to a home equity line of credit, access the equity that you have in your house, people started taking out these mortgages against it. And I think with DeFi, it's like you have this conviction in these assets, like ETH or whatever other one. You put this in a smart contract and trustlessly take out a loan against it, and you can do whatever with that loan that you want. It's a non-taxable event, probably, also moving very quickly, but presumably you're not swapping it for another token. You're just moving it from one wallet into a contract and taking out a loan. But this concept, when used with NFTs, is like the massive amount of value that's being captured by NFTs right now. I mean, most people here, and certainly us, probably believe that this asset class isn't going away. So the ability to trustlessly put this somewhere, take out a loan against it, and access that value without liquidating it will be super, super powerful. But then as this becomes a more mature liquid market, the number of other ways to get like synthetic exposure, because for the most people, right? Like, there's a lot of people right now that want NFT exposure. They want DeFi and NFT exposure, this next wave of something. And all of us are deep in the space, and it's like, how do I get NFT exposure? Like, it's like somebody that recognizes they want art exposure in their traditional asset class, traditional portfolio. Like, go buy some art that you value, that you think will have a liquid market. It's also very difficult. So all of these tools will help like more and more people get exposure to this asset class.
I'll ask this one to Jordan then, because it's related to that point, but now that we have a Bitcoin ETF, I wonder if we'll ever have like a mixed basket NFT ETF, whether it's run on traditional financial markets or in the new world. But price discovery is such a big issue. Probably no one is better placed, Jordan, than you to actually be able to kind of address this, but how should we look at oracles, the role they play, and ultimately price discovery of NFTs when you maybe have a mixed basket especially, or you're trying to determine what is the collateral value of my, well, whatever the NFT may be in question?
It's a really great question, because I think that might be the number one problem facing NFTs, and really the step you need to take before you start doing all this extra things with DeFi. You need to know how much these NFTs are worth. And several projects are trying to solve this problem because there's so many, because there's so much liquidity on things like apes and punks and some more of these in-game assets. We know there's a price floor. If we see something that sells with similar attribute combination as my CryptoPunk, I know kind of roughly what the value is of mine. But what about one of ones? What about addition of tens? What about these complicated NFTs that are out there? It's a tough challenge. Do you go by what it most recently sold for? What if it didn't sell at all? What if it sold a few years ago in a different market? It's a really tough challenge. There are several other projects that are trying to do this. The Lending is one of them, and Gabe gave you a good example of his company, PondFi, the last speaker. There's NFT.NYC, which is more like an index fund. So you're able to actually get a fraction of a CryptoPunk, for example, or whatever project, where maybe you don't own an entire punk, you own a fraction of a punk, and these are now tokens that you can exchange, and you know that the value is a fraction of a punk. But when you do that, you're able to do the math and figure out, okay, that means a punk floor is X, because at any time I can exchange a punk for it. And then there's projects like Upshot, where they kind of crowdsource pricing, almost like a Hot or Not, where you're clicking, yes, this is worth more than this, or this is worth more than that. And you do that enough times at scale, you're able to figure out, okay, this is worth more than that, and this is worth X, so that's worth X plus 2 or whatever. It's an interesting problem. Just another example of pricing these things is, so we said derivatives, or break them up, and then you can also create these baskets. You can put machine learning to these things. You can trust humans. There's a bunch of different projects kind of attacking the same problem. It's going to be interesting to see which one wins out, and maybe it's a combination of all these things that kind of give us the best price estimate.
Yeah, and this is a problem. I mean, it's a unique token, and with art especially, it's like the value is, well, who's the buyer of that? Are they trying to flip it? So they're very concerned of like traction and where it's going, or is it more of like, no, I'm just going to hold this thing forever. I'm never going to play it. Like, good luck getting pricing data for something like that. But even like going back to DeFi and NFTs, like Uniswap V3 liquidity positions are now represented as an NFT. So I mean, even those are difficult to value, and it's like, man, so it's an unsolved problem. It's definitely a hurdle, but it will be solved, probably with some like combination of a number of these new unique ways of doing it. But it's a good opportunity for those entrepreneurs out there in the space, because this is a hard problem to solve, but it will be solved, or it needs to be solved at some point in the future, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Upshot model because, again, like kind of that peer review of getting collaborative insights. The challenge is, though, of course, that in most financial products, automation is key. I think the same is very much true for DeFi as well. So how you ultimately automate that will be a problem. I mean, again, it doesn't matter in some ways because it's a peer-to-peer lending model. I mean, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So they can agree party to party exactly what they want to put into the contract, and then obviously that's what they execute against. I think it's harder when you have the classic liquidity pool model, because then you do need that element of automation. And I don't know how we could get there with limited drop NFTs, especially where the floor may not be known, or to the point there may not have been an active sale in the last 6 months.
Well, even for this event, if you're doing the POAP scavenger hunt right now, we've donated a prize that is an NFT, and it's got 5 NFTs embedded inside of it, as well as governance tokens from like 5 or 6 different protocols. So some of the NFTs that are embedded in there have a floor price of 1 ETH, and then a bunch of governance tokens. So that individual NFT is like, how do you value? Well, you add those up, but like put together in this unique way for this unique prize, does that add another little premium to it? It's very difficult to value.
We got about a minute and a half, so 30 seconds for each of us. Where can we find you in the metaverse, online? Plug your project quickly.
Very boringly, at Bradley Reese on Twitter, so my first name and my last name. Again, if you want to find out anything else about the company, checkout.com. The URL is in the name, so isn't that hard to find? Final word, DeFi is amazing. I think we haven't touched upon financial inclusion enough on this panel today, but I think that's the opportunity that gets me really excited. The idea of people in hyperinflation markets being able to stake a valuable asset for potentially a USDC stablecoin or similar, convert that somewhere, and to actually use in their local currency. I mean, these are real world problems that are being solved if we can actually crack this. And this is a significant step forward that the technology enables. Sorry, I took 45 seconds.
I'm Jordan Lyall, at Jordan Lyall on Twitter, the Purple Hat Punk. And yeah, again, working on the meme project later this year. Silver Surfer is kicking off V3 of the meme project, getting back to our roots of DeFi and NFTs, working with some amazing artists. And then my day job is Nifty's, NIFTY''S, Nifties.com, where in a few weeks we're launching The Matrix, actual exclusive partnership with Warner Brothers. You'll be able to receive a random PFP. We're issuing 100,000 of them on November 30th. And then on December 16th, it's our first event. You'll be able to choose between a red pill and a blue pill. Blue pill keeps your stay locked in the matrix, wake up in bed the next morning. A red pill turns you into a resistance fighter, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks.
Awesome. Ben Lakoff, at Ben Lakoff on Twitter or LinkedIn. It's convenient all of us have done that, right? Project is Charged Particles. It's at DeFi NFT on Twitter as well. And thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, round of applause.